In September 1813, American troops finally buried their dead. Some had been killed during the Battle of the River Raisin. Some struck down in revenge killings the next morning. For 8 months, they'd been left unburied. But even the burial was not the end. It was just the beginning of one of the darkest eras of history. In the wake of the killings of the River Raisin, the young nation was gripped with revulsion, anger, and fear. The settlers' anxieties turned into a political movement, led in part by a young lawyer named Lewis Cass, who had served under General William Hull in the surrender of Detroit in 1812. He'd just turned 31 when President James Madison appointed him the second governor of the Michigan Territory in October 1813. He would remain territorial governor for 18 years. The vast majority of the territory residents were Native people. There were hundreds of Native villages in Michigan, most of them communities of the Ottawa, Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Wyandot citizens. But Lewis Cass in time would change that. He would even help bring about a change in the way many Americans regarded Native people.
By that point in time in American literature, Natives were referred to as noble savages, and that meant that they were uncontaminated by civilization, by society. In Cass's mind, they were not noble savages, they were just savages. They needed to be somehow moved, contained, isolated from the rest of society, because in his mind, you could not assimilate these savage people into white society.
As Cass himself said,
"The Indians are impelled to war by passions. They have not only no principles of religion or morality to repress their passions. Reckless of consequence, the Indian is the child of impulse. This tract of country should be in our possession."
Lewis Cass would carry this very strong feelings towards Native throughout his whole political and military career. He would call them uncivilized, barbaric, savage.
He thought he was a true patriot, a true American, and that by killing Indians and in the manner that he did, that he was doing this country a great justice.
When it came time to make these treaties, the United States did not have the intention of the Natives being here in perpetuity. Removal was always in the plan.
As governor, Cass coerced some 20 treaties with tribes in the Great Lakes region, taking the vast majority of native land. Then, in 1828, Andrew Jackson was elected to the presidency. Jackson was an old Indian fighter who invoked the credo, "a scalp for a scalp," in bloody victories over native nations. Cass continued promoting national legislation that helped Jackson pass an act to remove Native peoples from lands whites occupied or wanted to occupy.
Within their Indian Removal Act, the method of dealing with the Natives was to move them away from the white society and then contain them on a reservation.
Nobody owns the land, yet you have somebody coming from far away saying the land is now mine, and it's based on this document and also God's will. Individuals like Cass, who have this idea that removal is for the benefit of Native people, is incredibly arrogant and incredibly condescending idea that it's best for you to be away from your home because of your uncivilized nature. And I stress over and over how devastating and how racist and how wrong these civilization policies are towards Native peoples. And they also cross the line into being a genocidal policy.
During 2 centuries, Indians have been in contact with a civilized people, but in their own moral qualities, they certainly have not advanced. Indians are wandering hordes of barbarians, people that cannot live in contact with a civilized community.
Many Americans of the day did not agree with Cass. A former Army surgeon named Edwin James hoped that Native people could be incorporated into the United States.
Why did the Native people fight? Not because they were evil or immoral. It was because they faced encroachment and oppression.
But Lewis Cass had friends in high places. A year after the Removal Act became law, President Andrew Jackson gave Lewis Cass a reward, thanking him for what the president saw as a job well done. Jackson made Cass his Secretary of War. In his new role, Lewis Cass forged American policy toward Native people. The Mississippi River would be the new dividing line between Native territory and the United States. But even that line would not last long. In 1843, the Wyandot, the last remaining Indian nation in Ohio, was forced out.
The leaders argued very strongly to stay in Ohio. They tried to ensure a future, but they also must have had in front of their eyes that our future could be we disappear.
You know, I think many times we talk about genocide and we think about genocide in other countries. Of course, the genocide that took place with World War II, but sometimes we neglect to realize that probably the greatest genocide that took place was right here in the United States. We have a lot of documentation concerning the Cherokee Trail of Tears, but every tribe has their own Trail of Tears.
Nearly 1/3 of the Wyandot removed from the Great Lakes died in Kansas in the first 2 years because of the unfulfilled promises of the United States. After rebuilding in Kansas, the Wyandot were again forced to move and today reside in Wyandot, Oklahoma. Building on his role in the forced removal of many Native nations, Cass still managed to capture the Democratic nomination for president and almost won the election to the highest office in the land. Many Native nations endeavored to recover their history, language, and culture that was stolen from their ancestors during their forced removal and generations of mandated assimilation. Even today, Native nations continue to deal with the aftermath of the battles of the River Raisin.
The legacy of the War of 1812 is felt very strongly in Native communities. It might be a blip on the map of American history, but for the map of Native history, it's huge.
We left nice homes, we left nice farms. Our kids were taken out of school or in the middle of their education. We left the churches that we attended, the friends that we had, and to wake up on a muddy bank of a river, not knowing what tomorrow's going to hold.
Tribes today still have to overcome some of the things that happened 200, 300 years ago. But we believe education is the way to teach us to learn from history. We believe that education is the leveler in many situations. And I'm proud to say that many of the tribes that were here in this area, the Wyandots, the Ottawas, the Shawnees, they have been the leaders in certainly Ottawa County, where I live, certainly the state of Oklahoma, of helping during difficult times. And if people like Cass and Andrew Jackson had been successful forever and ever, we would not see that today. And we would not have those contributions that we have today.